This is Sylvian Greensold. I'm here with Mr. Larry Dickson. Today is September the 13th. The year is 2021. We are meeting via Zoom as Mr. Dickson is currently located in California. Mr. Dickson, thank you for joining the Oral History Project with the Race and Reconciliation Initiative.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So today we're going to discuss your accomplishments before, during, and after your enrollment at TCU. And I know that you have some very interesting testimonies to share with us, and we're just looking forward to hearing them. So can you please tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, maybe memories from your childhood, any particular influences, spiritual influences, or any other influences that you would care to share?
Well, I was born and raised in Dallas, Texas. My dad was pastor of a Disciples of Christ church for 43 years. And therefore, we had some associations with other Disciple of Christ churches, both Black and white. And quite naturally, he had some knowledge of Texas Christian University, being associated with that denomination. And so that's where I first heard about the school and learned about it. I had an older brother who graduated high school in 1961 and tried to get into TCU and was refused.
Oh, on what grounds?
Well, at that time, I really didn't know what grounds he was refused, but we all assumed it was based on race. And so when that happened to our family, quite naturally, being a younger brother, I had no intention of coming to TCU after that happened. And also I have another brother that went to a historically Black college, Prairie View A&M College in Texas. And he left, he was 1 year older than I was. So when he was a senior, I was a junior. And then when he graduated, he went to Prairie View. And so my intentions were to go to not necessarily Prairie View, but a historically Black college.
Can we go back to your other brother, the one whose admission was denied? What was the official reason for refusing his application?
Because I was 4 years younger than he, I was never told what the official quote unquote reason was. We all knew he tried to get in and he did not get in. And so the assumption was that it was based on race, but I can't verify that.
I mean, it was before official integration.
1961.
Yes.
So more than likely
officially it was 1964. So
right. So well, he ended up going to University of Kansas, so he did quite well.
I see.
And so anyway, that was my first association with Texas Christian. And of course, my dad being a minister for such a long time, we knew about the school and we knew about the denomination and how it interacted with the school. And so after that happened, I really had no intention of attending TCU. And for some reason, when my other brother attended Prairie View, I went down there with him on his first day of school and was not too impressed with the campus or the school itself.
I see.
And so I decided I would look around, and I did, and that's how I ended up coming back to TCU, or putting it in a pod of schools that I would consider.
What were your expectations?
Well,
that you would come here at TCU. I mean, once you decided that you would attend.
Yeah, I had a thought process back then, and thinking back on it in the haze of 50 years or so, it, I think what I had in mind was that TCU, the statue of TCU, would be good for my resume. In other words, it would be something that I could use once I got out of school to get a good job and support myself and my family. So that was one expectation, but other than that, there was very little expectation of anything that would change racially, because the schools in Dallas at that time, the high schools, they were segregated. So I was coming out of a segregated high school into a school like TCU with very low expectations that anything would change, especially in my relationship to other races, especially the white race. But in the South, mostly, we were taught it's either black, white. We didn't have the, there weren't Asians. I mean, they were there. People were Jewish, people were Asian, but they were white. And in the South, it was white, black. That's all it was. So coming out of a segregated high school, I took an SAT test at a white school in Dallas, and I was amazed at the campus as it compared to ours. And so I really didn't have any expectations that anything was going to be any different. When I came to TCU, white people would still treat me the same way they treated me as a high school student, as a
How did they treat you as a high school student?
Well, in a segregated sense. I mean, all my classmates were black, so we didn't interact with white students. So I expected that to be the same thing at TCU. And I knew there were going to be other people because the school was associated, for instance, like Bright Divinity School, and it was racial. It was associated with the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. So I thought I would run into some people who were decent people, and I did. But I also ran into some racists.
And we're gonna talk about this in an instant. But first, let's talk about the kind of interactions you had, like, for instance, in your neighborhood. Was it, I assume it was a segregated neighborhood since you went to a segregated school?
Yeah. I grew up in South Dallas. And at that time, it was particularly a poor neighborhood. My dad was a minister. The first church he pastored was called Bow Street Christian Church, which was on Bow Street, which was near North Dallas, which today has been gentrified and rebuilt. Then we moved to South Dallas to a church called Forest Avenue Christian Church. And he pastored that church. And that church was on Forest Avenue, which I think now is called Malcolm X Drive. I'm not sure, but in the south part of the city. But it was a very poor area. Our school, we loved our school because as classmates, we enjoyed each other. And little did we know how much we were missing out on. Education-wise, culture-wise, all of those things. For instance, I took a typing class in our high school. We had one electric typewriter in the whole class. But then when I went to take an SAT test at this white campus, they had one at every desk.
Wow.
And
separated and unequal.
Yes, separated but unequal, and it was. They had cold running water. We didn't have that at our school. So, the school was just unequal, and it came through that education when I took that test. And then, so going into TCU, I expected the campus to be nice. I expected everything to be nice. And it ended up being a lot as I expected, but again, I had very low expectations going in.
I see. So when you decided to enroll at TCU, what about your classmates, your high school peers? What was their reaction? Were they supportive, or were they like, "Oh, you're crazy"? What was their reaction?
Both, because you know, I have a real good friend. His name is Anthony Kregler, and he was one of the classmates that went to TCU with me.
Correct.
And so, you know, we grew up together, and we were friends, and we're still friends today. The same with Ronnie and Ronald Hurl, and you know, we're all friends, and we grew up together. And so we supported each other's decision. But like you said, there were people who thought we were crazy because they, you know, they knew the history of this of growing up in a segregated society. Mm-hmm. And quite naturally, you know, our high school, as I indicated, we loved our high school. It was great, but little did we know how much we were missing out on educationally and culturally. And I said
ignorance was bliss. Huh?
Yeah, you know, and you know, I took a math class at TCU, and half the stuff it went sail right over my head. I mean, because of the background I had, that was not adequate enough for college prep. They just didn't do it in the segregated situations that we grew up in. So yeah, we had both reactions. You got to be crazy to go over there, and others say, "Hey, go for it." So it was my parents particularly supported me and wanted me to do what I wanted to do. And I was not an A student, I have to admit. You probably can pull my transcripts and know that, but I had to work hard for what I got, and I contribute that to a lot to the background that I had in high school. Or didn't have.
So in what about in high school? In high school, were you distinguishing yourself as a particularly good student given the standards?
Yeah, you know, I was a good student. You know, I was not a popular kid. You know, we were in ROTC. We did, you know, that type of thing, and I had a lot of friends, and still have friends from that era. But again, you know, and we had teachers that we liked, and we had teachers that we didn't like. But again, you know, there were, you know, you didn't know what you were missing out on until you left that school. And I think Dallas didn't integrate their schools until 1967, I think it was, 2 years later. So, and it's kind of interesting, that's 10 years after Little Rock. Yes. So Central High School. So the schools in Texas were segregated 10 years longer than it was in Arkansas. So we have that legacy of separation and unequal education as a background.
And do you have any recollection of interactions with non-Blacks during your childhood? Any particular memory of you meeting somebody who was not Black, and how did it go? How did it happen?
Well, yeah, you know, particularly growing up as a preacher's kid, you know, my dad went to a lot of conferences, both white and Black. And the Disciples of Christ Church, a denomination, had conferences. They had them for youth, they had them for adults. And so I attended some of those and met you know, white kids from different parts of Dallas. And we enjoyed some really good, you know, spiritually based interactions. But again, when we left those conferences, we went our own way because we were growing up in a segregated society. So I never saw them again after the conference ended.
So now you decided to enroll at TCU, and it is fall of 1964. Can you walk us through your first day and, to the best of your recollection, of course, anything that stands out?
Well, actually, it was fall of '65.
Fall of '65, true.
Yeah.
Because you came 1 year after. We're going to talk about '64, though. We're gonna
yeah, it was
that's
fall
a whole nother story.
Yeah, that was a year before I came to campus.
Right.
Yeah, it was fall of '65, but again, I was excited. I was assigned a white roommate in Milton Daniel, and I don't know how I ended up with a white roommate, but anyway, I did. And the first few days on campus, well, it's a funny story about my first day. Is I slept through my first class, so which was horrible. But so I was going through a process of, hey, I got to grow up and be, responsible for myself. I didn't have my mom to wake me up and say, hey, get ready for school. So that was a personal thing, but I did have
a learning experience.
Yeah, I did have a white roommate who pretty much ignored me, and so I ignored him too. But I don't remember his name, but he would get up and go to class, and I would get up and go to class, and we barely spoke. So I didn't really get to know him that well. What I did know was that at the end of the first semester, he was gone because he flunked out or he left the school. So after my first semester, I moved into Tom Brown with, I think, my friend Anthony and I roomed together for a semester, that second semester in Tom Brown. And then my sophomore year, or after the first year was over, we separated as roommates, and then I was still in Tom Brown, but again, the athletes, the football players and basketball players were in Tom Brown. They moved them all out of Tom Brown over to Milton Daniel because they had air conditioning. And Tom Brown didn't have air conditioning, so all the athletes left and went to Milton Daniel. So my sophomore year, I got a new roommate, and he was white, and his name was Harold Rosen. He was Jewish. We became really close friends, and I really feel bad today because I don't know where he is or how to contact him, but we spent 3 years together, the last 3 years of my career at TCU as roommates. And Harold was an honor student. So I remember many a night, I'd be sitting at my desk studying, and he would turn his lamp off and go to bed and leave me up studying because he was finished. And so he could sleep well while I had to study through the night just to pass a course. So, but we became really close friends, and he and I, as I indicated, we were roommates for the last 3 years. So that tells you a little bit about how I got into TCU and how I got started.
So there were, if my numbers are correct, it was 14 African-American students that got into that class. And from what I've been able to collect, it seems that all of you were kind of close-knit, and that you knew one another. I remember Mrs. Sims, who had indicated that you all had agreed we will graduate on time.
Yeah. Well, back in those days, in the 60s, you were expected to go 4 years and that's it, and then get out and get a job. So the importance of not being in school beyond 4 years was important back in those days.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So that was part of our parents' instructions to, hey, we'll pay for the first 4, but that's it, So we were on their timetable too. But yeah, we did, and we enjoyed each other's company, and we used each other really to persevere on campus, because we really didn't know anyone. We didn't have any friends who were white. So whenever it's like when you go in a supermarket or something and you see a black face that you don't usually see. I think that's how we were on campus, and we would run across campus to meet each other and find out about each other. So yeah, we were. I didn't know all 14. Don't get me wrong, but there was a close knit group of us that we hung out with.
Now, speaking of Mildred Sims, she had said, back in 2001 during an interview, that to her opinion, except for Greek life, she didn't really experience any racist bias. Now, if there was no racist bias, as per her experience, why do you think it took so long for TCU to integrate? Since it looks like the student population did not have that racist bias. Why wait so long?
Well, I don't know what TCU she went to. There was a lot of racial bias at TCU from my standpoint. And I can give you some examples if you'd like. Let's see. Julian Bond came to campus one time. I think he was a Georgia representative or something, but he came to campus to speak, and we were responsible for transportation for him.
Okay, and when you say we, who is we?
The members of the group, the Black students on campus. We were supposed to help him navigate from the airport to the campus and back so he could make his speech. But there were death threats on not only him, but anybody who was around him at the time. And I remember that distinctly. And, that was just one incident as far as racism was concerned that I ran into on campus.
Do you know who was the author of those threats?
No, we didn't know where they were coming from or whether they were legit or not. But that's just one instance. I mean, when I was in Milton Daniel my first year, I experienced some the N-word in the hallways. I don't think the kids knew that they were standing outside my room when they used it, but it was interesting. So I didn't answer the door, by the way. I just but the N-word was used quite a bit in the hallway and said it, and they were saying, hey, there's one in our dormitory even. So I didn't confront these kids. I don't know who they were. But those are just a couple of the instances that I ran into. And they were ongoing. I mean, that's why I was surprised when Mildred made that statement. I didn't know she had made that statement. But maybe she didn't run into any incidents, but I did.
Do you think there might have been a double standard between Black men and Black women?
I think there, you know what, I really don't know. The Black women that I knew on campus, well, first of all, I had a girlfriend from high school who was 2 years behind me, and our plan was to get married eventually. So I didn't interact a lot with the Black women on campus from a social standpoint, because I had a girlfriend that was coming to campus, was coming to TCU 2 years later, and we were dating ongoing. So, but I don't know if there was a different standard or not, but I mean, I experienced quite a bit of racism, not only in the dormitories, but in classrooms too.
In the classroom?
In the classroom.
Like from your classmates or from the instructors?
Both.
Oh.
You know, and it depended on, you know, what course I was in. I'm thinking about I took a course on Southern history.
Oh.
So, you know, their view of Southern history is a little different than ours.
Yes.
And it manifests itself in the class. And so I got into some difficult situations when I challenged that. So, you know, I think it was a history of the South course or something like that. But anyway, there was a discussion about how happy the slaves were. And, you know, I challenged the fact that they were happy, and it didn't go over well.
How dare you?
Yeah, how dare me, you know? So anyway, that's the way the course was taught.
Wow.
And, you know, no one was supposed to challenge the fact that I don't think they were very happy, you know, from the standpoint of the way you're telling the story. So anyway, that occurred in the classroom. So there were different incidents. Oh, and the biggest one I can tell you about is when my friend Ryan Hurdle was elected a cheerleader. So, and this is a dichotomy, because number one, the cheerleaders were voted on by the students, and he won. And he was the first Black cheerleader at TCU. And the fact that they voted for him is encouraging.
Right.
You know, at least they voted for him, you know. But the night he won, again, here comes the death threats. All right. And we set up, a bunch of us went to his room and set up most of the night waiting for those people to show up, because they said they were on their way to kill him. And so that was the biggest incident that happened to me during that time. And this was about 2 years later, because Ron, I think, was 2 years behind me.
Right. He graduated.
Yeah. So, but you know, those are just some examples of the racism that I ran into on campus, and there were others too. So when it comes to Mildred's statement, I just don't know where that came from.
Completely different experience.
Yes.
Now, do you feel like this racism, especially in the classroom, do you feel like this has hindered your ability to learn, or that it has hindered your academic performance in any way? Do you think that you were graded differently or anything like that?
I don't think it hindered my ability to learn or to discuss or to debate, but yeah, I think it probably had something to do with how it was graded, though.
Oh.
You have to remember, this is 1960, 65, 66, and you were not supposed to challenge, you know, most situations. You were to absorb the information and run with it as it is. So there wasn't a lot of challenging in those days when it came to academia, the way we have it today, or even 10, 15 years ago. Remember, we're talking 50 years ago, and in the state of Texas, in the southern United States.
Right. Wow.
And people used to tell me, they say, "Oh, Texas wasn't a part of the South." Well, I don't know about that. I grew up in it, so.
Yeah, it does have a unique history, but at the same time, I mean, it's part of the geographic South, and you know, it does have that legacy.
Yeah, it has that legacy. And of course, you know, I lived in Virginia for a while because my mom was from there and my dad passed it there for a couple of years. And so I know the difference between Virginia and Texas, but again, I know the similarities too. So it was interesting. I remember when I started elementary school in Virginia. So when even before I went to school, we used to go back and forth from Texas to Virginia because my dad was from Texas, and all his people were in Texas, and most of his people, and my moms were in the East or in DC. And I remember I used to tell everybody, yeah, sometimes we go north, we go to Virginia to visit my grandparents. And little did I know at that time, I wasn't going north. It was north of Texas.
It was north of Texas. It was norther, but
norther, but it was not north.
Oh, that is interesting. Now I have another question for you. Most of those firsts, right? They stated that they didn't realize they were making history at the time. And this is something that we're hearing over and over, that, you know, for us, we were just, you know, trying to get an education.
Right.
But now that you know, how does it feel to know that you've been such a trailblazer?
Well, you know, as I said earlier, I embrace the legacy of it all. I don't think we thought of it that way at the time. We were hopeful and grateful for the opportunity to go to the school, but again, I don't think we saw ourselves as pioneers or anything, because there were other Black students there, as I indicated. You know, the night school students, the evening school, the
those that we don't see during the daytime,
that we never saw. But yeah, so but it was interesting. For instance, like the relationship I had to James Cash, who, you know, was a big athlete on campus, you know, and he lived in Milton Daniels. So
did he?
You know,
as an athlete?
Yeah, with the athletes. So, but he was our hero. You know, he was a person that we looked up to, and my relationship to him, you know, we were not real close friends. We didn't know each other that well, but we had a lot in common. So we could relate to each other. And oh yeah, he used to save my life a lot, because he would, when my meal ticket ran out, he would throw us some food out the back door of the athletes' cafeterias to keep us going. So
I did not know that.
He would give us,
tell us. You know, we flew to Sarasota last summer, and he did not tell us that.
He didn't mention that, though.
He did.
Yeah, he'd hand us fruit out the back door, you know, because we were starving students, but he was our hero. He really was.
Wow. Interesting to know.
Yeah.
More pieces of the puzzle. Do you know he's getting his statue?
I know. I was so excited. I couldn't believe it. That's wonderful.
Again,
fantastic.
This is Race and Reconciliation Initiative efforts. These are some of the things that we do, you know, giving you guys the honor that is due.
Well, that's wonderful. I think it's great.
So we're just trying. We're trying, you know, to do the best we can with what we have. That's what our chair always say. So we can now talk about something that you may or may not have much knowledge of, but you enrolled in 1965.
Yes.
And although you are the first graduating class that was integrated, your group was not the first group of students of an integrated section in after TCU decided to integrate. There was a wave of students, 5 students, who enrolled in 1964 on the main campus, African-American students. Did you get to know any of them, or have you ever been in touch with any of them?
Actually, I did not. I did not know that those students were there, actually. Mm-hmm. And if you say that they were daytime students and they lived in the dormitory and they stayed on campus, I can't recall.
Well, the reason for that is because every single one of them enrolled in 1964 and decided not to remain another year, because that's how intolerable the climate was at the time.
Not surprising. Not surprising. And that's why, I said I made the statement about, I ran into plenty of incidents of racism in 65. But I don't remember. It's amazing to me to learn this now, because I didn't know about those students in 64. And yes. None of them came back.
None came back.
Yeah.
They did not stay beyond another year. And the few comments that we have are definitely not the most pleasant, evidently. Mildred even say that one of them warned her, there is no way you're going to last, because you need to get out of here as early as possible. I had the privilege to interview one of these students, and she confirmed that the climate was it was impossible to bear. So one of the things that we're doing with the Race and Reconciliation Initiative as an investigative task force is trying to see, well, what did TCU do different the year after that allowed all 14 of you to be retained while the other 5 did not? So this is a mystery that still needs to be solved. Clearly you did encounter racism, so the racism was not gone overnight, but there must have been something else. What kept you there despite all the discrimination and the racist remarks that you were victim of? What kept you there?
Yeah, well, first of all, as I indicated, there was my dad being a minister in the Christian Church Disciples of Christ denomination, provided me with a opportunity to attend TCU at a discount. So the price was right.
The price was right.
The price was right. If we didn't have that discount, I probably wouldn't have gone, because my dad didn't make a lot of money at the time, and that's why. And he had 4 kids, and we all went to college. So without that discount, it would have been out of the question. So the finances worked out, number one. Number two, I went to the school with some friends that I already knew, and we decided that we would stick together and support each other and make this thing work. It wasn't because TCU made it work for us. We made it work for ourselves, really. Oh. And so the fact that I probably learned more in Tom Brown than I did in the classroom when it came to people and how to interact with others. And I had, like I said, I had some wonderful white friends at TCU. My roommate was white, so wonderful guy. There were others too that we became friends with. And so we had to work at it. And I don't particularly know, or I can't put my finger on something that I can tell you that TCU did to make it better for us. Because I was not aware of the situation in 64.
Yeah. And as far as you can tell, between you and your friends, in all candor, was the racism one-sided?
Well, when you say one-sided, how do you define that? I mean,
as if, did you purposefully stay away from any white classmates? because they were not Black?
No.
Did you purposefully or exclusively befriend Black people?
No, I didn't. Not well, I mean, if you saw a Black person, you tried to befriend them anyway.
Well, all three of them, right?
All three of them, yes. But I didn't avoid any white people that just because they were white.
Right.
I remember that this is a funny story. When the athletes were still in Tom Brown with us, I remember a couple of the football players were down the hall from me, and so we went down to meet them because they were stars. They were football players, And so somebody said, "Hey, Norm Bulash or whoever it was is in the room down the hall." I go, "You mean the guy that plays football?" We go down and meet him. So we went down and we met him and we talked, and it was just a normal conversation. Not that we became friends, but that was a good indication of the fact that we weren't avoiding white people.
Right.
We weren't trying to stay away from them and stay only with the one or two Blacks that were on campus. That didn't happen. We did a lot of intramural sports, football, basketball, that type of thing. Of course, we were independents. You couldn't play on the Sigma Chi team. But so we did those types of things, and most of the team were white guys, or girls. So we didn't avoid white people just because we were Black. We I had some real good white friends, and I learned from a lot of people in the dormitory. And like I said, we had a good situation in Tom Brown where we got along really well. And I don't know, it seemed like it was a haven from what was going on outside on the campus.
That's good. Now, as you are probably aware, you know that TCU's reputation has been smudged among reports of racism in the more recent years. Have you kept in touch with the TCU community or like the Alumni Association or any of these organizations, like Black Alumni Alliance, any of them?
Well, not necessarily kept in touch, but I do get periodicals from the Alumni Association, and I follow those.
So you are aware of the turmoil.
I am, and I'm not, but I'm not actively involved in it. But I still wear my shirt a little bit, though.
Oh, I see that. Okay. Okay, go Frogs. Now, as far as you can tell, do you believe these stories that have been in the media, for instance, do you think that they bring in more transparency as to what really goes on behind the scenes, or do you think that it distorts what TCU is really about?
No, I think the school has come a long way. It's it's the transparency. When you say transparency, I think you're more about today than you were about what happened in the past.
Right. I'm talking, so, if you have kind of kept in touch with the latest development at TCU, with the knowledge that you have being there and then seeing the evolution of race relations, do you think that like those stories that kind of were leaked in the media, do you think that they show what really goes on at TCU, or do you think that it's a distortion of TCU given the progress that's been made?
I'm sorry, I can't comment on that because I'm not familiar with the day-to-day stories that are leaked or not leaked about TCU currently. Okay. And so I wouldn't be able to comment on that.
That makes sense. Very good. I do have a couple of other questions for you. So what message, as you, as Larry Dickson, what message would you have for those people who work toward racial reconciliation? Do you have any advice for this generation?
Well, I'm driven personally by my Christian faith, and I try to let that drive the way I approach people and how I interact with people. And it's interesting that you bring that question to me today, because this past Sunday our pastor had a sermon on fighting against principalities and powers that be. Mm-hmm. And really, that's what you're fighting against. You're not fighting against individuals or people, or you shouldn't be. And so I try to let that drive my my interactions with people. It's important to give an individual a chance, or approach an individual first, and then go from there. Because you really, you're fighting against media, you're fighting against politics, you're fighting against, those are the principles and powers that be that you're fighting against, and not necessarily an individual.
That's possible.
Yeah, so that's the way I look at it. I try to look at it.
Very wise. Okay, Mr. Larry Dickson, I have one last question for you. And okay, feel free to be as brief or as elaborate as you want with that question. In your own words, what does reconciliation mean to you?
Well, reconciliation really means to me, and this is a personal definition, because I don't know what it means to other people, but it's important to understand what has happened, why it happened. If it was a positive thing, to keep it going. If it was a negative thing, then it needs to be addressed, and it needs to be done by all people. So reconciliation means, to me, first of all, understanding, acknowledging, and then moving forward in a positive direction.
Wow, this deep.
Well, hey, I know that was your last question, but I just want to end the thing by saying, thank you for letting me tell you my story. It's a story that I don't really know if it means anything to anybody, or if it will down the road. I don't know how you're going to use this information or what, but hopefully it'll be something that will help your initiative, and help TCU too, because I am a part of that family. I consider myself a part of that family, even though I'm not up to date as I should be. But thanks again for inviting me, and I appreciate it. I hope this helps someone, and if not someone, more than just the community itself. So
it will probably help more than you know.
Okay, great. That's good. Well, thank you, Doctor. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Dickson, for your words of wisdom and your wonderful testimony.
Okay, have a good day.